Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rates and Lanes podcast. I'm your host, Rico Muhammad. And hopefully, we won't have any snafus as we did last week. We apologize for the technical faux pas of last week. Don't know exactly what happened or what caused it. We didn't really change much on either one of our ends, but we seem to be up and running this week. Um, but with that being said, my co host is right here with me, Mr. Chuck Snow of Traffics. And we're going to start off as we normally always do. We're going to go ahead and jump into this week's DAT trend lines report. And we are showing that the national average cost of diesel fuel is actually still continuing its downward trajectory. It's down by 2.6 percentage points this week, showing that the national average price for diesel fuel is at $5.43 per gallon. Diesel price drops and spot rates are still down. Drive-in rates around 10 cents a mile lower than they were this time last year. Downward pressure on spot rates is being driven largely by an oversupplied freight market. Carriers posting their equipment onto DAT load boards are at record highs for July levels. Following last week's 31% increase. In contrast, load posts were up 12% last week, but remained 21% lower compared to the previous year. So that's not a good thing. And plus, we know that we have record number of carriers that came into the marketplace. So let's just take a deeper look and see how the rates were performing over the previous week. We're going to start off with dry vans, and let's see if I can get in here and do a little thing so I can share my screen with you guys. I think this is the button. Yes, there we go. So now we're showing that the dry van for DAT. Showing that the coming out of the upper northeastern corridor for dry vans showing an average outbound rate of $2.44 per mile. Moving down to the southeastern portion of the United States, we're showing a average outbound spot market rate for dry vans at $2.80. Climbing back up into the Midwest, we're showing that the average outbound rate for dry vans are showing $2.78 per mile. Moving out of the South Central region, we're showing that the average outbound rate is $2.74, and checking in on the West Coast, we're showing that the average outbound rate checks in at $2.63. Moving on, changing gears over to the flatbed portion of the report, we're showing that coming out of the northeastern corridor, that the average outbound rate checks in at $3.36 per mile. Moving down to the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states, we're showing an average outbound rate of $3.77. Climbing back up to the Midwest, we're showing that the average outbound rate checks in at $3.64 per mile. And moving out of the South Central region of the United States, that average outbound rate checks in at $3.46. And wrapping up, coming out of the West Coast, we're showing an average outbound rate for flatbeds at $2.97. Shifting over and jumping into the temperature controlled or reefer portion of the report. Back up in the northeastern corridor, we're showing an average outbound rate for $2.62 for refrigerated. Moving down to the mid-Atlantic and southeastern states, we're showing an average outbound rate of $3.08. Climbing back into the Midwest, we're showing an average rate for $3.14. Moving out of the South Central, that rate is $3.16. And coming out of the West Coast, that average rate checks in at $3.10 per mile. And with that being said, let me jump back over and cancel the screen sharing and bring us back up. So Chuck, tell us how have you been and what do you make of all the things that have been going on that we just kind of covered really quick?
It's going to be a mess. I think an awful lot of the new entrants are getting a really, really hard lesson in life. A lot of them were proficient truck drivers, and some of them were really good owner operators. Went out and got their own authority, their own insurance, and played the spot market and did very well. And as you see, and we've been preaching this for the last 2.5 years, you and I, even before that, about how fickle the spot market is. And sure enough, everybody that was chasing the spot market is really starting to feel this, because they didn't build up those lanes. They didn't build those relationships with brokers for those lanes. And now they're just another guy that's got a truck that does 48 states.
Right.
So what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing is there's an awful lot of new carriers they just can't. They built this business model on getting a lot more a mile than what they're getting right now.
Right, and unfortunately, with what happened with the equipment cost and things of that nature, with the increased cost of operations, it's making a lot of people now question those business decisions of getting into the trucking industry, and it's kind of being a little bit of a rocky waters out here for new people that are coming in, that are first time kind of experiencing a little bit of a downturn when it comes to the supply and demand side of things.
Yeah, welcome to reality, kids. Uh, you know, I got to tell you, one of the things that creates this, and I guess we're authors of our own misfortune. Um, the trucking industry uses the factoring industry quite a bit,
Right.
and you've got these new entrants into the business that factor the receivables and trying to build their business on factoring. And I understand how factoring works. I've been, I've seen it for 20, probably the last 30 years, but it's gotten a lot more popular. The problem is you can't be factoring and losing 2 to 5% off of your invoice when you're not making money to start with. That's number one. And number two, to try to get into this business with no money. That's what's really doing it, Rico. You have so many new entrants that borrowed 3,000 or 5,000 from their mother-in-law, and a few thousand from their brother, and another 3,000 from their uncle, and all of a sudden they become JB Hunt on a $12,000 truck, or they think they are, and all of a sudden these people are trying to compete. They don't have the business savvy. They haven't been taught. If they would have taken that course from NASTIC, they would know something. There's no barrier to entry. And not that long ago, I remember talking to somebody, and they had it figured every time he added a truck, he took $100,000. And that was for the down payment, the insurance, and for accounts receivables, so he could finance his own accounts receivables for what that truck was doing. He could get the best deal he could on fuel, cash, or paying it immediately. And he said I believe it was $100,000 for a truck. That's what he would want to have in his jeans every time he added a truck. And darn it, the guy was successful, because he didn't overextend himself. He bought fuel at the cash price.
Right.
Okay. He wasn't losing 2 to 5% on an invoice to a factor. He was doing everything right, and that he built a business, and it's scalable. But he didn't have it until he had the money.
And I think that's the biggest thing. And like I said, I think one of the biggest disservice that happened out here was you had a lot of people that are touting how easy it was that you could make money. And for a while, it was really great. It was a lot of prosperity in the industry, and you could turn a quick buck without really having much effort or much information or much know-how at all. But those days have went the way of the dodo bird, as they say. Those days are long gone.
Definitely. Rico, that's a tailwind that we caught, the industry caught. And I got to tell you, in October, it'll be 48 years I've been in this game, and we've never had a tailwind like that for so long and so strong. They got in at a good time.
Right. And the thing about that is now that, and I think that that's the problem, is that they got in at a time when everything was the perfect storm, and prices were going through the roof. Not only the freight rate was going through the roof, but also the price of equipment and everything. And you have those higher equipment prices remaining now, and now that the fluctuation in the market, all of the fluff has kind of gotten blown away, and now you're left with brass tacks, and now it's getting much more difficult to turn a profit, to keep those margins the same way that they were, by paying when you got higher than average equipment costs, higher than average insurance costs, to maintain the coverage on that equipment, and also with inflation kicking in for your personal expenses and everything else. It's kind of like once again, another perfect storm, just in reverse.
Yeah, the only thing that hasn't gone up now is the freight rates.
Right.
The cost of tires. My prediction, as far as the used truck market, and I wish Ray was with us tonight, but although it's receding a little bit because there's been no new trucks built, I would imagine you're going to see a lot of the smaller carriers that are great operators, that have good safety ratings, that get I'm not going to say cheap insurance, but they certainly get a better rate than somebody starting new. Because they're good operators, they're going to pick up an awful lot of that equipment, and they will hire the guys that own those trucks to drive it.
Yeah, I'm curious to know what the timeline may look like before you start to see new equipment rolling back out here, with any real consistency.
My prediction on that one, and if one of our listeners wants to pipe in, I'd love to be challenged on it, or whatever. I really do think that the big guys are going to get service first.
Oh, absolutely.
If I was Freightliner or Navistar or Kenworth or Peterbilt, I'm going to look after the people that buy 2, 3, 4, 500 trucks. It's so easy. They buy 500 trucks that they're all spec'd the exact same way. A kid could build those trucks, because they're all, rather than these onesies and twosies.
Yeah, and I didn't know that there was an unannounced brake safety day that happened a few months back. Took place on the surprise event took place on April the 26th. Did not come with any advance notice or warning from CVSA. The focus of the event was brake housing and tube components. Right. So they popped a kind of a pop quiz on everyone, and the actual brake safety week is coming up next month, August 21st through 27th is the actual day of the known brake safety week. But the numbers were not too bad, I don't think, for the pop quiz. I think they had, according to this report that I'm reading here, they had over 9,132 inspections were conducted. They had over 1,200 inspectors actually doing there was an out of service rate of 14.1%. Well, that is kind of high.
It is. Now, you also have to remember, as you know, when they pull you in, they always want to find something.
Absolutely.
Where they used to be able to get us on our paper logs for form and manner, now they're going to get us for something silly on the trailer. No little things. I've heard them all. In Ontario, if you have your load bars lying on the floor, you can get written up for that.
Lying on the floor of the trailer?
Yep, it's an unsecured load.
Wow.
In Alberta, if you have, the old spring load bars using reefers,
right?
If you're using those in Alberta, you'll get written up.
Okay.
Because that's an unsecured load. And I think I have to say, Alberta's right on that. those spring load bars are not worth, they're not worth anything.
Mm.
I'm sure you put them in and the load jiggles a little bit, the things go flying. They've been using those since I was a little boy. I remember 9 years old going into the back of Tommy Rook's dad's trucks when they would get up to Canada or in Buffalo, and the things would be lying on the floor. Back then, they weren't good 61 years ago.
Well, the big thing that's going on right now, currently today too, it started out on Monday, and I'm not sure how much you got wind of it up that way, but hundreds of truckers block Oakland's terminal access to protest the AB5 situation. I don't know how much you been following it, or
I heard about it on
seen
transport on Sirius XM 149, and you know what? Rightfully so. I don't think I've ever been to a protest in my whole life, but these guys are 100% right for protesting. This is ridiculous.
Yeah, it says here, the story I'm reading here comes from Freightways. After a slow showing early Monday morning, an estimated 400 owner-operators managed to shut down truck traffic at all three terminals at the Port of Oakland to protest California's controversial independent contractor law, AB5. At one point, there's usually a flow of traffic of 250 trucks per hour going through the terminal gates, and they were able to slow that thing down to about 2 trucks per hour.
I think it's great. You know what? Welcome to the world the way it's going to be, because you have these single independent truckers, and these guys hustle.
Right.
They want to get in and out as fast as they can.
Exactly. And the whole thing with the whole, I don't know if that's the whole thing of unintended consequences. The whole thing of, I'm here from the government, and I'm here to help. This is another thing of, I think that the unintended consequences, they thought that they may have been trying to do something good, but they didn't really, once again, they really kind of just missed the mark on this.
100%. And thinking back, and we touched on it a bit a few weeks ago with Hank Seaton, when they deregulated trucking, one of the reasons for deregulation, my understanding was the world was going to a global economy, and a regulated trucking industry would not support those ports, because the visionaries at the time realized that these ports, there'd be a lot of velocity with containers. And in those days, the container ships were tiny compared to what they are today. But they realized when that container ship got into port and got offloaded, they needed people that, no offense to anybody, but they weren't company drivers working for large union companies. These were entrepreneurs, whether it was a single owner operator or somebody that had 5 or 10 trucks. That's what it would take. And that's one of the reasons trucking was deregulated. And now we're going to regulate it again, and it's working.
Yeah, it absolutely is. We got to, I don't know, it's interesting to see. I'm really interested to see if they're successful with this protest. Are they going to be able to get any kind of concessions with the law to get them to reconsider and kind of push it back? Because if you thought that, with all of the stuff that comes in through the West Coast ports and everything, if you thought we had supply chain issues before during the pandemic, and now there seems to be, they don't have the problem as bad with the ships out at sea. But if you can't get the stuff from the port to the market, that's a whole nother ball of wax that presents a whole new set of problems.
Well, I think you're probably going to see ships be diverted and go into other ports, into Seattle, maybe even up to Vancouver.
So that's a lot of revenue left in now. So now we're talking about another big revenue losses as well then.
Well, yeah. And, everybody I talk to that knows anything about the movement of people, they all talk, whether it's somebody in Vancouver that I know very well that sells real estate, and they were telling me how many people from California are moving to Vancouver. Hank Seaton was telling me how many people, Nashville is booming right now. All sorts of new people moving in, and it has been for a long time. It's one of the fastest growing cities in America, and a good portion of those people are people from California.
Yeah, it's getting ready to be really interesting to see, like I say, to see the different dynamics and different changes that are going on in the industry.
Yeah.
Now, as far as kind of shifting gears just a little bit to kind of bring it back to the whole rate situation. You had made an interesting. I think we had a private conversation. We was talking about driver pay, and you was talking about hourly pay. That you think that we might change the model to hourly pay. If you don't mind, go back and maybe see if we can unpack that a little bit. Let's maybe see if we can get a little feedback from people that are listening in, because I'm curious to know as to what do people think about other methods of being paid. Is by the mile the golden standard? Is that the way to go, or is there a salary that may be considered, or is by the hour going to?
Here's the catch. My only concern with by the hour, you can't have an hourly pay structure for drivers unless you can control it on the other end from the customer. And in our case, it's normally about a 10-hour drive from here to Chicago. So I think in order to cover your backside, because I don't think the trucker can afford, the person operating that truck can afford to get the short end of the stick. So the only way it works is you have a rate of, let's say it's $1,500 from Toronto to Chicago. I'm just going to pull that number out of based on 10 hours.
Right.
And if it takes 15 because the Ambassador Bridge is closed, or because there's a bad crash on 94, or there's traffic in Chicago, it shouldn't be the driver's fault. It shouldn't be the trucker's fault, the people that own the truck. Customers getting his or her goods to market. But of course, that's going to be a hard sell.
Right.
But, in the old days, that's what we did before I got in it. We paid drivers, when I was growing up, drivers got paid. Even when I got into the industry, we never, companies I worked for never operated that way, but the large companies always paid by the hour. And I'm sure today the large LTL companies probably pay by the hour. Because why don't people want to drive trucks? Let's start adding up all the reasons.
Right.
And one of the reasons is because they don't get paid for working. They bump a dock, and the load is supposed to be ready at 1 p.m. and the shipper comes out and says, "Oh, you're here early." The guy gets there 1:45. Unfortunately, your load won't be ready till 6. That's a driver's day. How many times is that going to happen until that truck driver says, "You know what? I'm not doing this anymore," or "I'm going to only run local," because he's not going to get home to his kids' little league practice or whatever.
Look, and I'm thinking that a huge issue is because it is a lot of people are still jumping up and down, is getting paid for detention. That seems to always be, how you, and one of them, I'll even admit, I was being kicked in with the whole ELD, a great way to now satellite positioning, and you have, so now there can be that about whether or not the, I don't think that we've had a lot of breaking the market with breaking compensation for those times.
Oh, you're breaking up there, Rico.
It's not. After the second, I came back in.
Breaking up badly.
How about
Nope, still. Can you hear me okay?
you're coming in? You're coming in fine.
Yeah, keep talking. Maybe it'll come back.
Okay, sitting there. Yeah, I tried to. I was trying to check on one of our streams.
No, you're breaking up again.
Uh-oh. Um,
We were doing great there for a minute. For actually half of the show. Now, let's see if we can. Let's keep trying.
okay, let's see. I'm not sure what.
Now, you know what? It's kind of funny because you came out real strong and then.
Okay, let me try something.
That's better.
I feel like a word. Okay, let's see. Did that work?
That's better.
That got me back.
Yeah, you're swinging like a champ, buddy.
All right. Okay. So, all right. All
Don't
right.
know what happened there. That's great.
Yeah, not sure what happened there, but still learning this whole little platform. So appreciate you guys being patient with us. Let me see. Let me take a look at the. Okay, we still got we good on time. So we talked about we was talking a little bit about AB5. We talked about a little bit about hourly pay. Um, Also wanted to. What are some things coming up that you are aware of, Chuck, that we might need to be? Um, I know that we talked about break week coming up as well. As far as the shows are concerned, are there any kind of trade shows or anything coming down the pipe that you may know about that we might need to be making a notation on the calendar about?
Not yet. The big trade shows don't usually start until the fall because people are taking summer holidays, especially this year. There's all sorts of regional and local truck shows, all over the continent, that are taking place, no matter where you live. But as far as big trade shows, they did cancel that show we were at, the whatever show they had in Atlanta. They finally put a kibosh on that thing, because that was not a, I think Matt's was concerned, but there was nothing to be concerned about after all. And GATS, the Great American Truck Show in Dallas, that's canceled. I think that show's over, unfortunately. That was a really good show, but apparently it dwindled in size. So that's the big one in Dallas.
Right, but not necessarily the trucking shows. I'm speaking more so to how does one find out about industry shows? I'm saying like refrigerated producers or stuff like that. Are those?
I got to tell you, the best source for that is Transport Topics. Do you read it?
I do. I don't get an actual hard copy. I kind of catch the stuff that they put out on social media and the different things of that nature.
I have to tell you, Rico, I think one of the best publications still out there is Transport Topics, and it's got every trade show, even specific ones like the Cattle Haulers Association of Wyoming and all sorts of regional, national shows. Although there aren't very many in the summer. Summertime is usually the trade show business is usually pretty slow during the summer. But if I can make a suggestion to our listeners, whether you have one truck or 50 trucks, Transport Topics, and you'll go through it. What I do when I get my copy is I'll glance through it really quickly. I'm an old guy, so I like hard copy. I still get them. I get them online, but I do like hard copy. And what I do is I glance through them really quickly, and then anything pertaining to what we do, I will read. Anything else, I just skim by, and I save them. And every time I get on an airplane, I take them with, and I will have 20 issues. And then I start reading them. I have never once watched a movie on an airplane in my life.
Oh man,
it's a great time to read.
So you just go through and read catch up on everything.
And you know what? And it's funny because one day I was looking through Transport Topics and I missed it, and there was a picture of me in there.
Nobody told you nothing, huh?
Nobody said anything. But it's got some great information, and some people may think, compared to FreightWaves is listen, these guys are doing a great job.
Yeah, they actually are. They really are.
They're doing it from all ends. I think their analytics are phenomenal. I think Craig Fuller is a genius. They're very, very smart man. And the platform is great. But you can't compare FreightWaves to Transport Topics. It's a totally different media.
Yeah. It's still there's still a couple of little things that I definitely see a couple of the different nuances. And FreightWaves is just they kind of burst onto the scene, and they've done a phenomenal job with a lot of the stuff. I mean, they've taken things that we discussed and taking them to a whole nother height and level. I mean, of course, we don't have the budget that they have.
Or the time. You know what? We're pretty limited. We have 60 minutes and we give 10 or 12 or sometimes even 15 minutes to the, to the rates. And then we used to do the bad broker report. Thank God we don't have to do that anymore. However, we may end up doing it again.
Yeah, we may be bringing it back.
I'm thinking that I was talking to somebody the other day and about that, and I think we're not doing the bad broker report anymore because there's not that many bad brokers because everything is so transparent.
We still have the whole issue of the whole double brokering in the And
Yeah, that's fraud. That's not even a broker who's not collecting in time from his customers, and then in turn can't pay his carriers, and he's having severe cash flow problems. That's one thing. But then you have people that are double brokering, and we've had cases where people have double brokered our loads, or somebody has given our fleet a double brokered load, and we had one once where somebody got loads from a broker and then masqueraded as a customer and gave us work as a customer and paid the bills right away.
wow.
They paid like immediately and built up more and more credit. And
So
then
they get the
yeah,
big one.
like they weren't, they owed us a lot of money and they weren't overdue. They just absconded.
Man.
Yeah. So these guys, apparently it was quite the scam. It was altogether, they hit a lot of different companies. So, and who knows where they are? Everything is so, it's so hidden that way because you don't know who these guys are, and they're fraudsters.
Right, right.
And I think that our listeners really need to be careful. You want to deal with people especially if you're operating a couple of trucks, even 10 trucks. You want to know who you're dealing with, because
Absolutely. It goes back to what we always talk about: the building the relationship, having the relationship, not even having, not even necessarily needing to rely on a load board so much. Even if your customer base is 100% brokers, hopefully you should be done build up a good enough relationship with enough brokers over the time period. I say 3 to 4 to maybe 5 brokers, to where you're not really even relying on a load board per se. You have those relationships with those established brokers to where they can keep you moving.
100%. Daryl Rutherford from Durango Specialized, who's been on the show a couple dozen times, I bet, through the years. He's built such a following,
right?
And he runs Toronto area out to Seattle, Portland, and back for the most part. And he's just taken on some other things just to hedge his bet. But his business is such that on his trucks usually leave on Friday. By Tuesday, they're full. And he doesn't make one call.
Right.
The brokers call him because he is given great service, and regardless of weather, regardless of anything, he's done the best. Sometimes trucks get shut down. You can imagine on Interstate 90 during the winter. It does happen going through some of those passes. But other than that, his guys do a great job. Daryl does a great job. As a result, he doesn't have to comb the load boards.
And that's exactly where you want to. That's exactly where you want to try to get yourself to. You want to get yourself have your pocket list, or have your established relationships with the brokers and the people that you do business with, and that kind of insulates you a great deal from being taken advantage of when it comes to double brokering or anything of that nature, because you know those people and you got that relationship built up, and you actually got somebody to call. You're not just doing everything transactionally.
Rico, where do people get into trouble? Every time. It's when they go into an unfamiliar area. You have your area between, for the most part, between Atlanta and North Carolina. That's your lane. The second, you take yourself out of that comfort zone and we put you down in Odessa, Texas. What the heck are you going to do in Odessa, Texas?
I don't know, Chuck. My truck might turn off once I get the line.
But that's where people get into trouble. And I had a friend in the trucking industry years ago, and he said something very intelligent once, and I will repeat it. Truckers are famous for creating problems to solve problems. That's what we do. We try to solve a problem by creating a new one.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. But yeah, so if you get those relationships established, though, where you got those people that are in your corner that can help you. Every now and again, I'm not saying that you won't rely on new brokers or something like that. Every now and again, that you might have one offs or whatever, but know how to vet the broker as well. Understand that's just like they vet you and they always ask you for your MC number and everything
Yes.
else when they call in or when you call in on a load. You need to have a similar process of going back and checking and verifying your brokers. And if you are
100%.
dealing with a factoring company, that's one of the greatest reasons why to even have a factoring company is for the credit, the credit resources to be able to
Yes.
them to pull the credit of the potential broker that you're looking at. Because without that, you're flying in the blind. And a lot of times, the carriers don't just rely on low board credit rating, because sometimes that's not the most accurate rating that
No, it's not.
there is out there. That's a really antiquated way of looking at the rating of the potential customer that you're looking to haul for. But if the factoring companies, and we might need to try to reach out to another factoring company and see if we can get them on the show, but they have access to other information other than just credit history stuff that they use to determine how much credit that you should extend to.
Rico, you know what? In fairness, though, you have, as a businessman or business person, you have access to the same credit checking facilities they do. You can subscribe to Equifax, D&B. There's a few other ones. We had somebody on the show from Ansonia. Yes, those are the three biggest ones. And we could, any of our listeners, they can subscribe, and it's cheaper than factoring, and that stuff's exact. Because I got to tell you, years ago, I remember a carrier or a broker going bankrupt, and we looked on their credit score that was on the load board, and they had already pulled the pin. They went bankrupt that morning, and they had a great credit rating.
Wow.
On the load board.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing about it is things happen so fast nowadays. They can have excellent, like you said, excellent credit rating showing, and they are already behind the scenes they're already shutting down. They're packing up the computers.
Yeah, and you know what, Rico? In fairness to everybody, what can happen in business, because I have seen it, is you have somebody that has extended credit. So you have a broker that is a good broker. They do everything right. They have a very, very large account. They extend credit to the account. Everything is fine on Friday. Monday morning, the account they've extended credit to, who's paying them right up to date, they go bankrupt. That happened in Canada with Target stores.
Target?
Yes, Target in Canada went bankrupt.
Wow, I never known
The
that.
Target that with those big red and white stores,
mm-hmm.
They had a subsidiary, Target Canada, and I got to tell you, it was run so poorly. It was like a bunch of 3-year-olds had started a business. It wasn't run at all the way Target in the U.S. That's a pretty well-run oil machine.
Yeah, because they on par with competing with Walmart now.
They're a force to be reckoned with in America. Yeah. I love going into their stores. They're bright. They've got merchandise, and delivering there is usually pretty good. They're really nice people. But they started a subsidiary in Canada, and the only way I guess they could break out of all the leases was they had the Canadian subsidiary, and they bankrupted it.
Wow.
And they took 2 carriers. They only had 2 carriers on the roster. They were brokering, giving all their freight to 2 carriers, and one of them was brokering most of it out. And And I was talking to the other one, and he said, you know what? It's not the $800,000 I lost. I can live with that. It's the fact I just bought a huge terminal to accommodate this account. That's what really hurts. And you should have seen this terminal. That was magnificent.
Ouch.
Now, I don't think you're going to, you'd ever see anything like that from Target in the US because it's so well run.
Right.
That's how they're able to go head to head with the big ones.
I got it.
That can happen. So had that been some smaller brokers, it may have taken them under.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I don't know. What advice can you give, Chuck, for some people that we talked a little bit earlier? You were saying about one of your friends, they wouldn't buy a truck until they had a certain amount of money in the pocket. What would be some advice you would give to people that are thinking about how do they begin to get to that next level? How do they begin to grow like that? They may be in a situation where all of this, everything that they got coming in is kind of accounted for. They're trying to figure out a way to maybe increase and pad their bottom line to be able to put some money aside to begin to.
Well, yeah, you're never going to do it, and I've said this from day one. Trying to when you're factoring, that's the biggest one. When you're paying that much money for money. Now there may be some deals out there, but when you're paying 3% a month or 3% for an invoice, it's very, very hard to save money. So my best advice is watch your pennies, save your money, really, save up, have at least, because you want to have enough money. If you're going to get that second truck, you want to have enough money so that you can buy fuel for it, as I said earlier, and you can handle the finances on that truck. Okay.
Right.
Okay. So that when that truck does a week's work and you're not going to get paid for 30 or 45 days, so you don't have to borrow that money at an expensive rate. Now, if you can get a loan from your bank or maybe mortgage your house and get a line of credit against your house, now that it's still a hell of a lot cheaper than factoring.
I would even say credit cards.
Yeah, that one's, you're almost, the problem is what do you pay down there? 2% a month?
It depends on who you have your credit cards through. If you can time it correctly, you're not going to be, it's interest free for 30 days.
Yes. And you know what? I get really upset when I see people, it's usually young people, buy things on their Interact. Okay. On their bank card. They should be using their Visa card and pay it right away. That's free money.
Absolutely.
When's the last time the bank gave you free money?
I mean, and not only that, if you can get the deal, I wish I could pay my fuel bill with my credit card. I tell you that much, because the amount of points that you can accumulate. I mean, I've free hotel rooms, free flights.
But let me ask you something, Rico. What's the difference in price of fuel where you run between paying for it on your credit card and paying cash?
Oh, no. The discount I get with Nastic, even if you pay cash, the Nastic discount beats cash price.
Yeah.
So it's not even worth the trouble of carrying around that amount of cash.
Right. And you have to pay you pay, well, you don't want to carry that much cash these days anyways.
Right.
Back in the day, we used to, you didn't have enough credit on your credit card, so you carried cash.
Oh, for sure. But now you can, you got some pretty good credit cards out there, especially if you got a business and you get business credit, get some business credit established. There are definitely some things that benefits, like I say, if you got reward cards and things of that nature, to the point to where you can start to accumulate and get stuff for personal luxuries and stuff like that. You know, I've taken a couple of, like I say, taken a couple of vacations for free based off of points that I've had
Oh
accumulated
yeah.
over the pandemic and everything else. At one point in time, I think I may have had um, close to 500,000 American Express points, and
Wow.
those things are pretty valuable.
So let me ask you, what did you buy on American Express?
I basically I'll try to cover all of my maintenance, all my expenses on my American Express card. I try to do everything that I can, buy tires, everything that I possibly can. I try to use my American Express card to to pay for anything related to the business. So you know those big large expenses. I had back when I had an older truck, I had to have the entire suspension redone on that truck. That thing was that one bill was like $5,000, and the American Express will give you, at least the one particular one that I have, they'll give you bonus points. So if you have one invoice over $5,000, they'll I think they'll do 2 times points.
Wow. That adds up. Now,
Yeah.
Rico, would your mechanic or wherever you took it to the shop, had you not used your American Express and paid them right away with cash or a check, would they have done it cheaper because they didn't lose the 1 or 2%?
No, because he charged me the 1 or 2%. The money that most places that don't do a tremendous amount of transactions to kind of justify
Right.
the cost of accepting credit cards, they just pass that right on to
Yeah, of course.
they pass it right on to us. So I ended up having to eat the extra charge when they put it on to the when they get actually do the invoice. So you know that's a little bit of an extra added cost associated with doing it that way. But like I say, on the back end, um, you know, I kind of finagle around with the points to try to get different things that
Right. You know what? You're a numbers guy, and I know that if it would have been to your advantage to not use American Express, you never would have pulled the darn card out.
yeah. Now something, and that's the thing about it. Some things you got to be aware of and be like, you know, if they're and I've ran into that. I've ran into the things where they charge you an extra 75, $100 for to you for a convenience fee, or the quote unquote convenience fee, or something like that, to accept credit
Right.
cards. And yeah, that's when it becomes that's when you have to really sit back and say, I don't think that's quite worth the headache or the aggravation.
Yeah, you know, I think you just have to. One of the areas where I think our listeners can save money is knowing when to use a credit card and when not to,
Hmm.
and try to get that. And you know, again, you and I have never even uh, we've never been endorsed or anything by NASDAQ, but we're both members, and I think that for our small carriers, I think you really need to take a look at buying your fuel through NASDAQ.
Yeah, it's definitely a no brainer. The first, if you get on the fuel program will pay for the membership in the
Oh my
first
God,
month.
yeah.
In the first month, will pay your membership fee just by getting on the fuel program, and it has some other little conveniences as well. Um, Let me look at the time. We got to okay. I can sneak this portion in because NASDAQ operates on EFS. So if you're out here and you get a line of credit with your NASDAQ card, EFS, that gives you the ability. Say if you're I'm sitting here at my desk. Say if you're at the lumper, if you're at the receiver, whatever, you got to pay a lumper instead of
Right.
sitting around waiting on the broker to send you an express code or whatever else. You can go into your account, go ahead and pay for get your own express code. Go ahead and pay it and have it reimbursed on your invoice. That way, you know, save yourself a little bit of time with your own EFS, your own access to the EFS to issue those express codes or whatever that you may need. And same thing for repairs and things of that nature. If I'm at a situation to where um, it becomes too expensive about using the credit card we talked about, and it's cheaper to use a check.
Yeah.
You have
You
access,
know,
and you can do it that way.
Yeah, the other thing about Nastic is they've got a pretty good arrangement with one of the truck stops, one of the chains.
Yes, Petro TA
Yeah,
Petro.
and they'll do minor repairs, roadside or in the shop. They're not going to rebuild your motor or put in a new clutch, but they could probably throw an alternator in or sell you a couple batteries or stuff like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so I'm looking at that time, Chuck, and we have arrived at that junction. Yeah,
Well, this hour goes fast.
it
Uh,
does.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite hours of the entire. It's probably my favorite hour of the whole week.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, we got to look into. I don't know. I know that you said you had some vacation time you was getting ready
I
to
do,
do.
and I called where I'm going to be. For our listeners, I'm going to be in northern Saskatchewan, just south of the Northwest Territories, starting next Monday for about 4 days fishing. And I called today to see what the internet was like up there, and the gentleman that runs the camp said it's here, but it's not very good. So I think from almost the Northwest Territories, that's really remote. It's fly-in only. I think I would be taking chances. So you and I will talk during the week and figure if you want to have another guest, and I'll certainly advertise it before I leave.
Absolutely. Well, Chuck, let us tell everybody. Well, they might not be able to get in contact with you next week, but tell them how they can get in contact with
Well,
you.
send me. Best thing to do if you want to get set up with Trafex, or you're having some issues in your business and you need a hand. It's my pleasure to help our listeners. Send me a quick email, just chuck@trafex.com, and I'll be glad to help you. If you put your phone number in, quite often it's a lot more time efficient for me to just call you back and see how we can help you. It's just better use of time rather than me sending a long email.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we appreciate you guys for taking time out to, whether you're listening, where you joined us live, or you're looking at us at a little bit later time. We appreciate you. Excuse the technical glitches. I'm thinking we're going to try to figure this thing out. We're going to try to. I'm going to continue to work on this thing and see if we can't get it perfected. But with that being said, we want you guys to tune in next week. I'm not sure who we will have in as a guest, but we definitely will be having a guest on board with us next week. It may be Hank Seaton. I'm going to try to reach out to another gentleman and see if I can get him. I don't want to announce it until we can actually. I got his card sitting over here, but I don't want to announce it until we actually get him. Don't want to jinx it. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, be safe out there. Stay healthy. Keep it in between the mustard and the mayonnaise. And God willing, we'll talk at you same time, same place next week. God bless you and good night.
Catch you on the flip flop. God bless.